We're back out here once again, and if you're an angler that has to deal with a lot of thick vegetation, then this video is for you. We're talking about 3 completely weedless presentations, and best of all, the bass are just crushing these baits right now. Stick around, you don't want to miss this one. Come here, buddy. This is a good one. This is a good one, honey. Oh yeah, this is my best one all day. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing. And if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know that the lakes that I fish, especially the big lake, are just choked with vegetation. There's hydrilla, there's eelgrass, there's pondweed, there's milfoil, and there's even lily and lotus all around the lake. Hydrilla rings the big lake all the way around, up until about 10, 12, and even 15 feet deep. But even then, you've got grass and milfoil that's even deeper than that. So you might think that you're in the clear when you're casting your crankbait out, only to have it covered with slop whenever you bring it back. And you're thinking, I thought I was deep enough. On the big lake, vegetation is everywhere, and the vegetation is the key to how you fish. Now, a lot of guys, they're like, I want to get rid of that vegetation. I don't like fishing it. It just messes me up. But I'm telling you what, having fished it for so long, I look for it. I love fishing that vegetation because the big girls like it too. And if you learn to fish that vegetation and you learn to make it part of your arsenal, I'm telling you, you will catch some really nice bass. So today we're going to be talking about 3 baits that I use because every time I go out, it's about a weedless presentation. It's about figuring out how to make a normal presentation that much more weedless. So we're going to talk about some of the presentations that I'm using in extreme, heavily vegetated waters. Places where you're going to see the hydrilla coming up all over the place. And even where you don't see that emergent hydrilla, there is plenty of submergent hydrilla all over the place. So again, as I said, you're not going to find a bare bottom spot. Even when you're casting into those areas where it looks like there's an open spot, that's just submergent hydrilla next to a bunch of emergent hydrilla. So how do we attack that? What are some of the presentations that I'm using? Well, I fish it in several different ways. And right now, as of September 2024, late September, I'm finding that there are just different ways those bass are responding to than they have in years past. Last year, a chatterbait, a bladed jig, was working exceptionally well. This year, the entire year, a chatterbait has not really produced very well. It's not been a bite that I've been able to rely upon. And that's okay. Bass change, seasons change, conditions change. It happens. But this year, well, this year has been this guy. You guys have seen me fish with these smaller spinner baits, and even the ones that have the one blade on them, I've taken other things like a swim bait head and put a beetle spin on it. But I'm telling you what, this is absolutely killing it. And you look at that and you say, lowbrow, that's got an exposed hook. There is no way that is weedless. I'm telling you what, a spinner bait, whenever you learn how to work it through the grass, it can be exceptionally weedless. For me, at this point, it's just muscle memory. I work it in such a way where I let the speed of my retrieve. Whenever I cast it out there and I'm retrieving it, I let that dictate where that bait is in the water column. If it's a smaller, lighter bait, I actually have to go more slowly because those blades will give it lift and have it come up. I want to tick the tops of that vegetation. And I can still feel that hydrilla, that milfoil or whatever, give a gentle pull every once in a while. That's what I want to feel. When I bring my bait back, I might have to pick off a blade of grass or two, but it's not going to be a gum ball of slop, right? That's what we're trying to avoid. A couple of sprigs here and there, every few casts, we can live with that. And best of all, you guys have seen that they have been smashing a spinnerbait. It has gotten so many huge bites over and over again. I've coined it the year of the spinnerbait for me, And it really has been. And I'm hearing from you guys as well. A lot of you guys have told me you've started picking up a spinnerbait and fishing it around docks, around structure, and even through vegetation, and having a lot more success than you ever did before. Now, obviously, another way to work that vegetation is with something like a weightless fluke, which is what I have tied on here. This thing is amazing, and you can work this in various different ways. If I'm going to weight it, I'll usually take a nail weight and put it right in there on the top between the eye and the hook tip, because I find that actually reduces the amount of hookup problems that I'm having whenever I'm trying to catch a fish. It just kind of falls away, it gets out of the way, and I'm able to have that good hookup ratio. I can work this in several different ways. Nothing fancy, but what I like to do whenever I'm casting it out there, especially if I've got just, I'll cut a bit of a nail weight in half and I'll insert that in there just to give it a little bit extra weight. You guys have seen me do that before. Take my wire cutters, clip that nail weight in half, and insert it into that fluke just to give it a little bit of ballast, just to give it a little bit of weight. And I can work it real slowly. And if you rig your flukes straight, which you should be doing, make certain you're rigging that fluke as straight as you can. That way you can give a gentle tug on slack line. It'll go this way. A gentle tug on slack line. It'll go back that way. And you can kind of ease it back and forth. And then you'll stop it in the water and it'll kind of glide down. It'll nose down first just a little bit. And I have watched, polarized glasses, like we've talked about before. These are your fish finders. Polarized glasses are your fish finders because then you can see in that water. I actually see that white fluke standing out really well. And I can see it moving off to the side and then disappearing. And that, a fish has got it. Now, I don't know how big a fish until I actually set the hook and try to work it, but it happens all the time. That fish is watching that fluke as it goes around. And I can work it really slowly. I can work it just a little bit more quickly. I can give it some more aggressive pops. But I pop it, wind the slack out of that line, pop it a little bit, wind the slack out of that line. I'm working it gently. It seems like I'm working it aggressively, but all I'm doing is pulling the slack out of that line. I'm not yanking it. I'm just popping the slack out of that line, and I'm working it very gently, either faster or slower. And obviously, that's going to come through the very thickest slop. That's going to come through above the bottom, right? We're looking at a little bit below the surface with the spinnerbait, a little bit further down with the fluke. I can actually get into the thick part of some of that hydrilla, and it's been exceptional. I have been crushing it on all types of flukes, whether it's the cream ones that you guys see me use all the time, whether it's a Zoom Super Fluke, or whether it's a Strike King Caffeine Shad, or what have you. I am just absolutely crushing it on those flukes. It's what they're keying off on right now. And it's what's producing for me on those days when, well, sometimes they're finicky, but usually you can coax them to bite something a little bit more realistic. So that's where the spinnerbait comes in, where it looks like a little bait school, and that fluke comes in. Fish it right through the thickest slop. I'm telling you, cast that fluke right in there. You see a heavy bunch pile of whatever, vegetation on the surface, lily pads or whatever. Tweak it a little bit, see if you can't get it to sink down in there, and then just work it. You will feel the grass. It's not like it's going to come through and you don't feel anything. You will feel that grass, but it's not going to come back all gummed up. Again, it's going to be one of those, if your hook gets untext-posed, you'll grab some stuff, obviously. But if your hook stays text-posed, rarely will you get anything on it at all. So you'll be able to fish that effectively in those places where the bass are hiding. You can fish it under brush, you can fish it in shadows. And remember, all that vegetation, when you're looking out from the bank, especially you bank anglers, and you see all that vegetation, that casts shade, and it can be very useful and it can be very helpful whenever you're trying to fish that slop. Now, lastly, we've got sort of a no-brainer, one that you would expect to see, but it's really working right now. It's really catching fish. Again, we've talked about those bass are chasing schools, those bass are chasing minnow, feeding up on those bait fish. That's why the spinnerbait and the fluke are working so well. But that craw bite is also going pretty good in a lot of areas. So you can use a bottom bouncing or a bottom dragging technique. Now, something like a Ned rig, in my fisheries, unless you want to be pulling up a big ball of slop on every single cast, a Ned rig is generally not the way to go. They do make weedless Neds. They don't work. Those two little wires are garbage. They don't do anything. The hydrilla laughs at those. And anybody who's tried to fish a quote-unquote weedless Ned in those situations knows exactly what I'm talking about. No, what we're talking about is a good old Texas rig, right? We've got a Yum Dinger tied on. I've got a 1/4 ounce bullet weight, 4-aught EWG. Now, technically, the Fluke is also a Texas rig, but we're going to be talking about this as a weighted Texas rig, 1/4 ounce weight. And again, a good old June bug, because when I'm fishing down in that vegetation, that water tends to get a little bit more murky, that silt tends to kick up a little bit more. So I want something that's got high contrast. It's very effective for me. You may have better results with something like bubblegum or purple or even white. But the key here is, this is the biggest key, is that weight is pegged, right? And you're going to hear everybody tell you, hey man, don't peg your weights whenever you're fishing grass. I'm telling you, if you're trying to maintain bottom contact and you're trying to come smoothly through that vegetation, peg your weight. Because what happens is, if I take that away and I let that weight free float, or free slide along that string, what happens is the tip of this bullet weight catches grass every single time. So you might as well not even be trying to fish a weedless presentation, because you will get gummed up on every single cast. All it takes is just a little bit of a hard edge, just a little bit of an angle, and that grass is all over it. Trust me, I've been fishing grass for almost 40 years. You want that weight pegged. And it also helps whenever you are hooking into a fish and you've got yourself a nice bass on there. Again, when you keep it pegged, that weight is nice and in spot. And while that bass will shake and use that weight to its advantage to try to shake it out of it, you get a good hook set, you can still bring that bass to the boat. But if you've got this weight slid up here, well, only thing you've got now is you got a plug knocker. And that weight can come down and knock that hook right out of the mouth. I've seen it. I've seen it happen. It's happened to me. So think about that. So a Texas rig really does a great job of getting those fish that are looking after those craw, that are following along the bottom, which, as we move into the fall transition more and more bass are going to be looking in that direction. They'll be moving away from the bait balls and more toward those craw. So a Texas rig has got to be part of your arsenal. And right now for me, it's absolutely crushing it as I move to it more and more. So these 3 baits are exactly what you need to work around the grass, not be afraid of the grass, and catch a whole ton of fish. So there you have it. 3 presentations that work so well in the thick vegetation, and they're absolutely getting crushed right now. You bank anglers, this is your time to shine as we move further into the transition and those bass are getting closer to the bank. Try these lures out, and I'm telling you, you're going to like the results. Thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.